So I'm gonna Thanks, Michelle.
Sorry.
I'm gonna introduce Joy Burns from Wheel the World. She is the Alliance and Community Coordinator over there, and she'll take it away.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to share my screen. 1 second.
Marcy came too.
We'll include her in the attendance.
Marcy Guerra.
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay. Well, I will just get started. And as you have questions, if the team could go ahead and just write down those questions for me as we're going along, and then we can have a time at the end to answer any questions about the presentation or about myself for accessible travel. Okay.
Perfect.
Fabulous. Well, today, do some introductions of who I am, and then talk about Wheel the World, which is the company where I work, and then some kind of practical travel tips, and just talk about kind of why travel. Everybody has their own opinions about they're fine just staying home, and other people are like, I'm gonna go until I can't. So that's our agenda. So first, who am I? My name is Joy Burns, and this is myself and my husband. My husband is a quadriplegic. He is a low quadriplegic, so he has some hand impairment, but has been in a wheelchair for 42 years. We've been married for almost 30 years. So I met him much after after he was paralyzed. I am the mom of twins. I'm a recreation therapist by education. I love traveling. I've traveled to all 50 states, all 7 continents. I'm obsessed with exploring the world. And little known fact, I love gardening. It's the season for gardening right now. And we started a podcast at Wheel the World because everybody seems to have a podcast these days. And it's Travel Talk with Joy. And I talk to people that have traveled and travel a little differently. So that's on YouTube. You can check that out at a later time. So enough about me. Every good speaker starts with a story. So mine is a travel story around a Gatorade bottle. So, one of the big challenges of travel is people go, how am I going to travel to Europe or Africa and not being able to pee on a plane? And so this story is about that. So my husband and I are traveling to Europe, and my husband had to pee, and he's like, instead of getting up and getting in the aisle chair and going to the restroom, because that just has a whole nother, I have to transfer the whole thing. He always just brings a Gatorade bottle that's empty, and he pees in the Gatorade bottle, uses a catheter, pees in the Gatorade bottle, and then I just go throw it away. Well, this day I was like, it was late night, movie was on. I was so intent on my movie. I helped him, took the Gatorade bottle, put the lid on, and then I just sat there for a little bit because it was a really good movie. Well, I had forgotten that this was not my water bottle. And about 10 minutes later, I got thirsty. And I literally take the Gatorade bottle, open it, and take a big swig. So the moral of the story is, do not wait to pee. Make sure that you just take that directly to the restroom, have your partner take it directly to the restroom, because it could happen to anyone. So that's my pee story. So that's a little about me, but how did I find out about accessible travel? And that's a great story. So this is a group trip. And I had been following this guy in the green wheelchair. His name is Corey Lee. If you guys don't follow him, you should. Curb Free with Corey Lee. Everyone needs to follow him. He, to me, is the best guy out there traveling with a disability, uses a power chair exclusively. And he's been to all 7 continents. He travels so much, and he does it for a job. He travels for a living, and people pay him to come see their city or their attractions. And it's an amazing amazing content that he creates to help people travel. So I was following him, and I saw he was doing a trip to Chile, a group trip. And I thought, I've never been to Chile, and I really want to meet this guy. And so I signed my husband and I up to go on this trip. And that's my husband, the bald guy. And it was supposed to happen in 2020. Well, then 2020 got destroyed. And so finally this trip happened in 2022. And it was my first real experience with using an accessible travel planner. Prior to this, my husband and I just kind of made do. We traveled a lot, but it was stressful. And it was, you know, are the activities going to be accessible? Are they going to say he can do the activities? Like, it was always like in the back of my mind, this kind of anxiety going into a trip. So I went on his trip with my husband. Well, this is what the trip looked like. It was seeing these amazing vistas. It was downtown Santiago, seeing the streets there. This middle picture is us on this thermal hot springs resort or spa in the middle of nowhere in Chile. It was accessible transportation and accessible things to do. And I didn't do anything. Like, I went into this trip, like, I actually had anxiety because I hadn't done anything. I didn't call to make sure the bed was the right height, that he had a roll-in shower. I didn't do any of it. And I showed up and I was like, oh my gosh, is this going to be good? Well, it was amazing. It was the first time that I had went on a trip where, I hate to use words like this, but I felt like it was normalized, you know, where I felt like this is just like traveling like normal people. And it was like, man, my world was just blown away. And I also there learned who Wheel the World was, because they were the planners that planned this group trip for Corey Lee. So that's how I found out about Wheel the World and accessible travel planning. So how did Wheel the World start? So we are a company that started by some friends. They were some guys that had been friends from childhood. And one of them, the guy right there in the orange wheelchair, his name is Alvaro. Alvaro was in a wheelchair when he was 18. He's also a low quadriplegic also. And his family always had a passion for travel. And he's like, just because I'm in a wheelchair, I don't want that to stop. So he was going to business school at Berkeley, and he had some friends there, and they said, hey, we should go take like a really epic trip, and we should go to Patagonia. Well, they went to Patagonia, and this was the trek they went on. It was, that wheelchair is called a Jolat wheelchair. It's a completely dependent wheelchair. It's for really like trekking to places that you couldn't get in a wheelchair. It's kind of like a Sherpa system where there's one person in the front and one person in the back. And they got to these kind of views, and they got to the top of the W trek in Patagonia, which is kind of a really famous trek in the Patagonia area. And they kind of took like a few friends to film it, because they realized, wow, this is going to be pretty cool if this really works. And they came down and they uploaded that video to YouTube, and it went viral. So they were like, this is why we're in business school. We're going to start the Travelocity for people with disabilities and have accessibility needs. So Alvaro is one of the founders, and his co-founder is his best friend from grade school. So what they've developed is an online travel marketplace to find and book experiences, hotel things to do. Because the reality is, like, the information out there isn't very accurate. You know, you say that you need an accessible room, and because one size does not fit all, a lot of times powered share users, they want a chair and a bed that's like 30 inches high. My husband, when he takes a manual chair, he wants a bed that's 25 inches high. So it's big differences. 5 inches, it's a huge difference when trying to get in and out of bed. You know, this is a beautiful bed, but that bed does not work for us. That bed is way too tall for my husband to get in. So it's Wheel the World was created to solve problems like this. And, you know, this is the reality of what travel is like sometimes. I'm sure you guys have been to places like this, and this is a US city. This is in Portland. And there was a step everywhere, and think they could have just had like a little small ramp, you know, and that could have been a completely different experience. I think the funniest one is, look at that center picture. The irony of, they have a step to get in, but then they have a button to open the door. I'm not really sure what's going on there. But I was so like, I had to take a picture. You know, we want to be out educating people about that, you know, that's not okay. So what we're doing now is we are offering verified hotel accessibility information. And this is, to me, a game changer when it comes to hotels, because at the end of the day, you can have a lot of things that may not be accessible in your vacation, but when you come home, you want to know that you can get in and out of bed, right? That you can take a shower and not fall off the shower bench because it's so old, and you know, they have a little shower bench this big or that slants down like this because they haven't really thought through the person using this. So what we've done is we've created a tech solution for this. So what we ask our customers to do is you go in and you tell us all of your needs: bed height, your shower preference, door width, like everything down to those little details. And then what we do is we go into hotels and we map them. So I thought this was crazy. The first time I heard about this, I thought, okay, really, you're going into hotels with a tape measure? But that's exactly what we've done. And we've been in over 2,500 hotels around the world. And we're measuring how high is the bed. And I don't know if some of you maybe use a Hoyer for transferring, but we see how much space is below the bed as well, so you can get a Hoyer lift in there. It's like little details like that. We measure over 200 data points. You know, what the turning circumference is in the bathroom to see, can you turn your wheelchair all the way around, things like that. So you can make sure you know what you're getting. So this is our listing for like the Atlanta Westin perimeter. We have pictures of everything. And then if you see all this data right here, this says the bed height is 31 inches. That's great for a power chair user, but it's not going to be good for my husband. So he knows, okay, that's not the best one for me. He'll go to a different listing. But you see the free space on the side of the bed. Is there space enough for my wheelchair to get there? Is there free space under the bed? So all those like really specific details, you're able to find out the accessibility information. And there's nowhere else that you can get this type of detailed information. So you choose which room you want based on all the different data points. And then the great thing is, you know, normally, I don't know if you guys have ever had the situation, but you call and you reserve the room or get online, reserve the room. And then you call the week before to say, okay, just want to make sure I'm confirming that I have a roll-in shower. And then you call the day before, okay, I'm calling to make sure that I have the roll-in shower. And you're doing all this follow-up again. But what happens now is our travel planners do all that follow-up for you, so you don't have to do it anymore. And so again, it just makes traveling like normal. You just make the booking and it happens. And if you show up and it's not the right situation that we said you're getting, you get your money back. And my husband and I have used this a lot because, of course, I think it's the best way to go. And we have not had this trouble yet. And I'm sure, I'm not going to say it's 100% because I'm sure occasionally there's things that happen where the hotel will give away the room or things like that, but we still get the money back. It's been huge as far as the amount of stress that it comes when you arrive at a hotel room. So the other thing we do other than hotels, I feel like I'm showing you a family photo album right now, by the way. This is in Spain. Is we do just accessible adventures around the world. And what happens is you choose your destination. We plan everything for you. You confirm your booking and you're going to have complete accessibility. You know, with especially people that use power wheelchairs. My husband recently has switched from a manual chair after 40 years to a power chair because he's kind of shot his shoulders. It's the idea of accessible transportation. And this is one that is difficult, really difficult. And so, you know, on these trips, though, you're going to be able to have accessible transportation, accessible accommodations, and accessible things to do. And we've gone on some trips before where we show up to do the snorkeling boat activity in Mexico, and they say, oh, no, we can't take anybody in a wheelchair. Or, you know, we don't have the insurance for this. These type of things. And sometimes in other countries, and even in our country, you don't have a there's nothing you can really do about that. If a private company says we can't, you can deal with it on the back end maybe later, but it's just so nice being able to show up and have it all done. So these are just some of the places that are available. And when I saw this for the first time, I was like, wow, this is incredible. I can go to Machu Picchu and I don't have to worry about figuring out the logistics of Machu Picchu. Or I can go to South Africa and all I have to do is make one phone call and the logistics are taken care of. So that's the ability to not have that stress, especially overseas, because I think overseas, that's a much harder, the phone calls, the language barriers, all of that. And these are some of the places that we are in the US. Miami, Atlanta, that's where I live. Zion National Park, Zion, they have that same Yolette wheelchair that you saw that was taken to Chile. They have one of those there. And so you can go with friends and get to the back country of Zion and see just beautiful vistas. The other thing that I want to talk to you about is like shore excursions, day trips, and accessible activities. So a lot of people like to cruise, and they see that cruising is a great option for people that use chairs because you don't have to be packing up and then going to the next hotel the next time, then packing up and going to another hotel to see another city. So this is a convenient way of seeing different stops, but not having to pack and unpack. And I recently had a customer with ALS, and she wanted to do a big family trip. And she said, I think cruising is going to be a great way for our family to be able to see a lot of things, but I don't have as much work to do. And I wanted to make it easier on my family and also easier on me, so I'm not exhausted all the time with packing and unpacking and having to deal with that stress. So at Wheel the World, one of the cool things that we've done is we have something called the Wheel the World Academy. And this is where we send our tour leaders, our tour operators to an online academy where we're able to really educate them about disability, because, so many times in my marriage, I've had people look to me for, dinner for two, or what would he like to eat? It doesn't go over well. My husband does not like that. But, educating people of just disability etiquette. And so this has been really great because it improves our travelers' experience and just eliminates some potential barriers for you guys in destinations. Even things like, every 2 hours, make sure that for our tour operators, that they know where the accessible restroom is in Athens, Greece. Things like that take some pre-planning that people might not think of normally. And, think about what can a trip do? And, the customer that I had that had ALS recently, she was talking about how she wants to have some major memories made with her family. And, she said, for her, that was the thing that she wanted. She wanted to have the pictures, have the memories with her family. But these are some other reasons. So this is Corey. He's obviously in Egypt. And with Corey, I think that this is a really good statement where he says, I love to travel because I love shattering perceptions and showing the world what's possible for wheelchair users. I also love that travel pushes me out of my comfort zone. And I think for a lot of people, you guys might relate with this, is you can get in a comfort zone and where everything is easy. Or I shouldn't say everything is easy. Everything is safe. You have a routine. And, Corey's like, when I travel, it pushes me to be bolder and to have adventure. One of my customers recently with MS, he said that he's like, I had such, my symptoms of my MS were so much decreased when I travel. And he's like, I don't know if it's the dopamine that kicks in when I travel, or, if it's I'm just getting out of my routine, and that helps. Is it the serotonin? Is it that I'm outside more? But he's like, it really helps me physically, my body and my soul. But just getting out of your comfort zone, I think, is a big thing. And then this is another friend that we have through Wheel the World. And Ryan is an Army Ranger. And Ryan was in a major firefight in Afghanistan in 2019, and he lost his leg, his arm, and then his other leg up into his pelvis. And Ryan obviously was a huge adventurous guy prior to his injury. And he said this, and I love this quote, and I think it resonates with so many people in our community. Adventure in your heart cannot be blown away by trauma. It's important to keep that part of you alive, because just because, your disability or your trauma happens, that part of you is still there, that wants the adventure. And that's where, I always, prior to being in travel, like I said, I was a recreation therapist. And I always told my patients, I would said, I like to say, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. So, do anything you can to lean into that sense of adventure, because you don't know what tomorrow is. And, go long and far now. Think of the biggest vacation that you want to take, that you can take with support if you need it, and do that one first. I just think that people that have that wanderlust like me, and it's in your heart, you have to find a way to make that happen. And using a company like Wheel the World, or someone like Wheel the World, we aren't the only travel planner out there for people with disabilities, but it lets you have that adventure without having the stress, because it can be stressful to travel. So what has World have done for my husband and I? This is in Boston. It allowed us to see Rome, allowed us to see Iceland and Chile, places that, I would not have thought to be accessible. Well, did you know that the Roman Colosseum has an elevator? They have 2 elevators to the top of the Roman Colosseum. Like, that's the kind of thing, who knew that was going to be accessible? And, people push back and they say, oh, it's too old, like Charleston, South Carolina. Oh, we're too old for accessibility. Well, I don't think Charleston was before the Roman Colosseum. The same thing with, we went to Greece with our kids, and there's an elevator, an external elevator attached to the Parthenon. Beautiful elevator. And they made the Parthenon accessible. I'm not great with history, but I think it's somewhere around 2,000 years old. Like, it's that kind of thing of where accessibility is there. You just have to have the right people that know how to find it. And so, like, for this picture in Rome, the driver and our tour operator with Wheel the World knew exactly what's the easiest way to get there. Because you see that cobblestone? That's not easy cobblestone to go roll around. But when you have a tour operator that knows what's the closest point where you have to go over the less cobblestone, that's the kind of tour guide that you want, that really gets your needs and your struggles. And cobblestone is a struggle. And then, Iceland, who knew there were like this? We took a boat out into this glacier lake, accessible. They had made a ramp so we could take the boat into the glacier lake. And it's just, you don't know the accessibility is there until someone shows it for you. I had no idea that that would be an adventure that I could have with my husband. And it's such a great memory. So let's talk about just some practical travel tips. And, I don't know anybody in this group as far as, what your level of travel is. So for some of you may say, well, of course I'm going to do that. But some of you may have not traveled yet or are thinking about it. So we're just going to go ahead and start with all of them. The first one is, letting the airlines know your needs before you travel and request the bulkhead. This is big. The airlines need to know your size of wheelchair, your weight of your wheelchair, because not all flights can accommodate a large power wheelchair. And so it's really on the traveler to make sure they have told the airlines way ahead in advance when they book to make sure that airplane can hold their chair. And request the bulkhead. Our hack right now is we always fly Southwest, because if you fly Southwest, you always get the first row. So that's nice. But in other instances, you can request the bulkhead. Next thing is put an air tag on your chair so you can track it. Unfortunately, there have been a time or two when our chair, we couldn't find it in the airport. And so now we put an air tag on the chair so we can always track it and see, where is it? Luckily, we've not had a chance to ever lose our wheelchair. Some people have, but we have not had that happen. Next is take off all removable parts and store them in a tote bag to bring on the airplane. And don't forget to bring your cushion on the plane. So that's your cushion, that's your side guards. You know, with anything that can come off, little small brake extensions, things like that, get them all on the airplane with you. And then pack your backpack with some quick fix supplies like zip ties, extra Velcro, duct tape, and a plastic bag and bubble wrap to protect your joystick. That one's huge. That's definitely saved my husband's joystick on his chair for sure. Next, attach a laminated info sheet to your chair with instructions, like your photo and your contact information, where it says, you know, you were working with my legs. So they understand how important it is. And, you know, the times that my friend Corey, he said he's actually had the person handling it call him because they had questions about how to engage the brakes or, you know, disengage the wheelchair. So that's really important. Bring a Gatorade bottle on the plane in case of emergencies.
Don't drink
Do not
it.
drink it. Do not drink it. And you know, people, this is disability groups, so I'll just say it all. People worry about, you know, bowel accidents on the plane. And this is something where you got to be practical. You barely eat the day before. You use a Depends. So then you feel like you have like a little bit of protection too, in case anything would happen. But yeah, until they get to the point where they have accessible restrooms on the plane, and I'm not sure that will ever get there, but you know, there's things that you can do, like watch your food 24 to 48 hours before. Use a Depends, use a Gatorade bottle. There's things like that that will be very helpful for you. Next is pack a carry-on with medication and chair chargers. You do not want to lose a chair charger. I left the chair charger when we were coming on the way back from Orlando recently. My husband had his power chair and we left the chair charger. I did. He did not. He got on the plane and I was, you know, taking all the loose things off his chair, and I left the chair charger on the jetway. Don't do that. That was not good. They mailed it to us and we got it back, but that was, it was a little heated. Next, be an advocate for yourself. And if you don't like the way you're being treated, speak up, have your caregiver speak up for you, and know the Air Carrier Access Act. When my husband and I have traveled, there's been several times where people are going to transfer him. My husband is a full dependent transfer. And there was someone that was, you know, 5'5" behind, and the tall person was doing his feet. He's like, nope, I need a tall person behind me, shorter person in front of me. And if he doesn't feel like they look strong enough, he asks for someone else to do it, because my husband weighs about 220 and 230, and he's a heavy transfer. So make sure that you're directive with that care. One little thing, if you arrive and a bed height is too high, remove the box springs. We do this often. If Wheel the World has not booked our room, we have a bed that's too high, remove the box springs. And then finally, use an accessible travel company that really understands your needs. I don't think a regular travel agent can do what you need, because they don't understand accessibility. And, you know, you have to understand accessibility and also the destinations. So recently we went to Italy, and there's a little village called Positano, Italy, and it's a lot of cobblestone. And they asked my husband, you know, the month before we went, they said, do you want to rent an electric wheelchair in Positano so you can manage it better, since he was in a manual chair at the time. And he said, yeah, that'd be great. So we get there, they have the power chair, and it just made that day of the cobblestone manageable. So it's like they have to understand the accessibility and understand, you know, what your needs are as a traveler to really get the best thing for you. So I want to show you this video. Can you
If
hear it?
want, we can talk about
Can you hear it?
what led us to use wheels instead of legs. That way, we can tell you the sad version and version 2.0, which is even sadder. Or if you'd rather, we could do it like the movies, and we'll embellish everything with a tearful story of effort and determination. But there's something we have to tell you. We're not superheroes. We didn't feel like them when we climbed to over 2,430 meters above sea level, or in the most beautiful and incredible places in the world. Unlike superheroes, we thought the same thing anyone would. We felt grateful to be there because it made us understand several things. But before we start to tell you, could you please change the music? Because there in Machu Picchu, we realized that despite everything, this is not a cheap imitation of life. This is not a copy or a simulation. This is not a lake that longs with all its heart to be the sea. This, my friends, is life. Life at its fullest. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. Believe us, we are saying this for every tear shed, for every person hugged. In flickering neon lights with fireworks lighting up the sky, life. Pack your bags, recover the ability to wonder, open your heart and let it explore. But even then, you won't be prepared for this because we are not inviting you to travel. We are inviting you to live.
I love that video. You know, I think that that really says a lot about, like, we all have a passion in us for travel. Some people might be like, I need to travel for a weekend, and that's my comfort level, is to go do a staycation, or, you know, just in my city, or drive 2 hours to the mountains and go do something. And other people say, no, I want to have a big adventure. And I think there's a place for both. And, you know, that's why coming today, I just really want to hopefully, for those of you that do want to try traveling, is to, you know, take a step, and a baby step, and get out there and start. Because life is short, and we want to be there to help you, as you have your travel needs. What kind of questions could I ask, or could I answer for you? Sorry.
If you want,
I just wanted to say I had heard of Corey Lee before, and we used his tips, 15 things that are handicap accessible in Key West, and we used his guidelines, and we had a fantastic time about 3 years ago.
His tips are amazing. Like, I use them too. You know, we, where were we going recently? It was like Gatlinburg. It wasn't any place big, but he's been everywhere. And he has, like, here's the 5 things to do. Washington, DC, we used it for there too. Here's the best things about that. So, I'm glad you, have found him, because he's, he, like, makes me want to travel more. You know, people sometimes say, oh, I don't want to be inspirational. Corey Lee is 100% inspires me to be like, okay, let's go again. Let's go somewhere. I love it.
And I've seen he does that annual international trip. So, and I didn't think that would be possible. I'm my biggest fear is the airplane and not being able to pee for however long it would take me to get over to Europe or Egypt
Mhm.
or something.
Couple things I want to share about that. And again, since this is a medical community, this is something for women that is amazing. It's a procedure. It's called a Mitrofanoff procedure. And it's where they kind of redo your innards to where you pee out your belly button. And
Yeah.
the women that I know that have had this, it's been amazing because then, she'll cath on the plane through her belly button into the Gatorade bottle. And it's just allowed so much more freedom because you're right. It is harder for women, especially on airplanes. Men have a little bit easier time with that. Speaking of trips that he does, we just started doing a cruise called Crafted by Corey Lee. And it's a cruise with Virgin Cruises. And we launched it literally just last week. And within the first day, the cruise that he's going to be on sold out. Or there was like 15 people with disabilities that got to go on the cruise with him. But then we have the next cruises that he won't be on, but it's still a Crafted by Corey trip to where there's accessible transportation and tour in the Dominican Republic. And then the next stop is an accessible island that Virgin has with accessible beach chairs and just accessible beach mats. Really great things to do that if you're interested in something smaller, it takes out of Miami. So it's not a long flight. And I think it's a 5-night. And we have had so many people be buying that because the struggle about cruises, it's great to get on the ship. And my husband and I have done several cruises, but then often the ports aren't accessible. So they have the tenders where, for those of you that haven't cruised, there's a little boat that you have to take from the big boat. You have to get on a little boat, and that little boat takes you to the port on the smaller ports. So those aren't accessible. You can't get on those. So you have to make sure that the boat ports at a proper port. And then once you get off there, you have to either make sure that there's good things to do or there's accessible transportation, both which are often hard. So you have to be, cruising is great, but you have to be particular. So this Crafted by Corey cruise that we did, we made sure that the stops are accessible and there's things to do once you're at the stop, which is great.
We just took a cruise last month with Holland America, and we had a great accessible room, but none of the tours were accessible. So when we got to Aruba, my sister-in-law and a friend had done all the research and found the only accessible organization to get a bus to take us all around the island. But to know ahead of time that someone was taking care of that would be a huge, huge help.
Yeah, you should, if you enjoyed cruising, you should really look into that one. And our website's just wheeltheworld.com. And you'll be able to see that there.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. What other questions does anybody have?
Joy, we have one in the chat asking if you could speak on traveling with equipment. Some of our folks are on CPAPs, BiPAPs, or like non-invasive ventilators. And then Betsy said, in addition to that, traveling with wheelchairs.
Yes. So, CPAPs, that more like respiratory equipment, that's going to be, airline specific on what their regulations are on that. So I don't know as much on that. But as far as like other equipment, for those of you that might use a Hoyer lift, a lot of the places that we go, like we do accessible trips, let's say to Barcelona or Athens, Greece, we have partners there where you can rent equipment Same thing with like the Virgin Cruise. We have partners that you can rent equipment so you don't have to travel with your Hoyer, because, you know, you think you already have enough stuff that you have to take with your medical stuff, with your wheelchair. And you're like, you know, shoot, now I have a Hoyer and a shower chair, or, you know, those kind of things. So it's nice when we have partners in destinations where we can get that equipment for you. And as far as with wheelchairs, you know, traveling with your, well, two things. So I told you about how my husband's been in a chair for 40 years. And then a year ago, he started using a power chair. And then we realized that traveling with a large power chair is sometimes difficult. And so now we have like a wheelchair, a whole garage full of wheelchairs, depending on which chair he needs for the day. But one of the newest wheelchairs we added to the fleet, it's a travel chair, and it's called the Jazzy Carbon, Carbon. I would really recommend this chair. There's also one called Travel Buggy, Bugggy. We were debating between these two chairs when we looked, and like extensively looked and did reviews and everything on these chairs. The thing about this chair is it weighs 35 pounds. So this chair could technically, you know, with like, I could help my husband transfer, and then I could fold it up and put it places. It's, you know, his big chair was, it's 400 pounds, the one that he uses every day. It's a quantum chair. It was, I think, $35,000 or $40,000. So very, very expensive chair. And we don't want to risk that chair getting damaged by the airlines, because that would take a lot longer to get again. So if you have the ability, you know, some people, due to level of muscular function and stuff, like Corey, he wouldn't like not having, he has a backup wheelchair, but it's not the travel style chair that I was talking about. So it kind of depends on your level of function. But for my husband that is a quadriplegic, that works well for him. And another thing that you might also look into, for those of you that do want to travel, but like, oh, I don't want to risk my big chair getting messed up. Like in Atlanta, there's a group called FODA, Friends of Disabled Adults. And they get equipment donated a lot of times to them of people that don't need it anymore. And so I would look in your area, like if you're interested in a travel chair, but you do need a higher level of support than the type of travel chair I was originally talking about, I would call organizations like that and try to find a travel chair.
Hey, Joy, it's Teresa Torres. I do, and Jess, I have thank you for your story. I appreciate it. But mine is probably a little more simpler. I'm looking for, my husband has ALS. He was diagnosed in 2020. He can't fly. The doctors have recommended don't fly. So, and he's never had a desire to fly out of the country. So I'm having a hard time relating to all of your travels, which is fine. I'm more interested in something more local in the US, something more like, to your point, Charleston, South Carolina, Richmond, Virginia, something close, you know, where we could drive. Although he'll have a fix. I'm not a great driver, so he says. But yeah, flying is not for us. Out of the country is not for us.
Where do
So
you live?
Colchester, Connecticut.
Okay. So on our website, we have something called Destination Verified. And this is a program that we have where it's kind of like a business to business component of our company, where we go into cities and we verify them. They pay us money, and we kind of are like consultants that come in and do accessibility auditing to see what's accessible, where are you doing good, where do you need improvement. And if you look at the Destination Verified tab, you'll be able to see which cities are in the places that you have that you're interested in, to see, you know, what would be great, like Washington, D.C. We have done there, but we've been into over 100 cities in the States. Sometimes they're super small or super, like Butler County, Ohio. They wanted to have an accessibility study, so of course we do it. You know, Grand Rapids, but you know, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Savannah, Atlanta, um, New York, I don't think has done it yet. But Upper New York has. So you could go there and find out what cities would be in a drivable area. Because I think for a lot of people, like they don't want to be in a airplane. And so you aren't alone in like, well, let me just do something that's close, you know?
Either not that they don't want to or they cannot be health
Yeah.
wise. They just can't be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joy, are there accessible RVs? We've gotten that question here before and have always struggled to help people with that because there's
Yeah.
accessible vans, obviously, but like an actual RV or something like that. Is that
Oh, I've tried. So I actually interviewed someone recently that he has an accessible RV that he wants to be using for people with disabilities. He is in outside of London, about 2 hours outside of London. So he's like, well, if you fly to London and then you can use my accessible RV. So it's great for people out there, but I've never met anybody that has one that they rent. I've also interviewed another couple that they have one that they modified themselves. But personally, I wanted to, find an accessible RV and do Yellowstone or, kind of Glacier Park up in there. But I've not found one, and I've tried. And another resource that I'd loved for you guys all to be a part of is, so as the community coordinator, I manage our Facebook community. And so we have our normal Facebook webpage for Wheel the World, but then I'm the manager of our accessible travel community is what it's called. Accessible travel community, put it on Facebook. And there's about 35,000 people in it. And people all the time, including myself, my husband's going to Spain and he's posting, what is the train system like in Spain? So, and there's people, all disabilities in here from, walking to ventilator dependent, like everything. And it's a really great place as a resource, but I posted there because I wanted to go on an accessible RV. And there wasn't anybody that responded with accessible RV options for rent in the States.
Any other questions?
Could you repeat the name of that procedure again for the girls?
Oh,
Mhm.
the urinary.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can. So it's called, hold on, I got to make sure I'm spelling it right. Okay, it's Mitrofanoff. Mitrofanoff.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. For women, my friends that have had it done, it really is a game changer for convenience and ease, whether you're cathing yourself or having a caregiver cath you. It's just so much easier. Same thing with my husband recently got a colostomy because for 40 years, he didn't have one. And then as he's aging, things are not working as well. And so he got a colostomy, and that was a huge game changer for his quality of life also.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think it's just good to know what options are out there. And then everybody's very personal about the decisions they want to make with their own care. But I think it's really good to know what options are there.
Thank you.
I have a Jazzy that has worked out well for me. And recently I too did a cruise round trip out of New York, which eliminated the air, and that really worked well for us. So
Where did you go, Ken?
it was a 14-day on the QM2 down to the Caribbean and back. And I've traveled a lot, fortunately. So it worked out well. So I wasn't going to I never thought I'd take a cruise ever again, but here I am. So,
Oh,
and it was really nice.
that's really great. You know, another way that depending on how much time you have as far as, you know, schedule or maybe money also, but doing the the transatlantic, because you could do a transatlantic, you know, US to Europe and then do European cruise.
Yes,
Like that transatlantic is supposed to be just great. Like if you love the ship you're on, people have a great time. There's not as many people on the ship, but that would eliminate the need for a airplane.
right. But the other thing is, it's money and time, and those are two factors that are always a problem. And I think for most people, but yeah, no, I only got off that ship twice though, and but the ship was nice enough. It was great.
Yeah, I feel like if you're on a great ship, if you have great entertainment, great food, the staff is good, you know, that's my husband, there's often times where he can't get out, or sometimes he's just like, nah, I don't want to go see that island. It's another
Been
Caribbean island.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been there, or it's the same thing as the last one.
Yeah,
So I get that sometimes it's fine.
yeah,
It's great though that you went on the 2-week, and I'm glad you got that travel carbon, the Jazzy Carbon chair, the good one.
yeah. It really works well.
Mhm.
So.
Any other questions or comments?
You can also rent a wheelchair while you're on the cruise. When the first cruise we did a year and a half ago, it was out of Fort Lauderdale, and I didn't want to bring my power chair on the airplane because there's too many things that can get broken. But we rented the chair for the cruise, and me personally, I wouldn't do it again because I don't have the arm strength, and even with a power chair, the ship gets to be big. But if you have the strength and you don't want to bring your power chair, renting one for the cruise itself is an option. At least it was with Holland America. I'm sure other people have it too.
Yeah, I think a lot of the cruise lines offer that as an option, so you don't have to travel with your power chair for sure. I would love to see some of you travel with Wheel the World at some point. But especially with use the hotels, even if you know you're just going to go somewhere for a weekend, let us make sure that you have the right hotel that works well for you. And my name is Joy, and I'm just joy@wheeltheworld.com. So if you ever want to get in touch with me to ask me specific questions, I'm available.
Thank you, Joy.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joy.
Yeah.
Y'all have a great day.